I'm Katie Parla, and today we're making caper leaf salad for my book, Food of the Italian Islands. Maybe more accurately, tomato salad with capers and caper leaves. Because caper leaves on their own are super expensive if you can even find them, and that would be a 100 euro salad, and that's silly. This is what we call in showbiz a dump and stir recipe. Chop a bunch of stuff, put it in a bowl, put more stuff in it, stir it, done. So this is one of the easier recipes. Actually, the hardest part of this recipe is the shopping. Caper leaf salad obviously needs caper leaves. So there's one company in Italy that makes them. It's called Nicchia, and they're in Pantelleria. So this salad reminds me of that volcanic island off the coast of North Africa that is, at least for the moment, part of Sicily. Caper leaves are just what they sound like. They are the leaves from a caper plant. If you've ever visited, well, almost anywhere in the Mediterranean, you probably saw some cascading bushes growing out of mineral impoverished places like the Aurelian Walls in Rome, a 3rd century wall circuit that has so many capers growing from them. These giant bushes have leaves that have buds that then flower, and when pollinated could turn into caper berries. We'll get there. First, we're talking about the leaves. So there's one place in Pantelleria that processes the caper leaves from their caper harvest. It's all done by hand. People sit in a field in the morning before it gets too hot in July and August, and they snap the leaves off. Then they're salted and rinsed and then salted again. And this will take out all the bitter tannic flavor and make them tender and more edible. So when they're ready to eat, they look like this. And they taste exactly like capers, which is pretty cool. So I mentioned the buds on the caper plant. Those are the ones that you find literally in every supermarket or deli, not just in Italy, but like probably everywhere on the planet at this point. But they're not the only caper fruit. I guess actually this technically is the fruit and that's the bud. So these are caper berries. These are also from La Nicchia in Pantelleria. Once again, this is not an ad. This is just a artisanal product made by a small group of people working really hard, which is why I love them. That's really good. Oh my God. So my mouth is watering, which doesn't usually happen when I eat capers, but anyway, these are that delicious. So when you bite into the caper berry, you'll see there's seeds inside. So really it's a fruit. And I just don't have capers, so I'm using these instead. When you're a compulsive collector of food from Pantelleria, you generally end up having like 2 or 3 kilos of these guys in your pantry. So maybe you're in that boat, maybe not. But if you don't have these, just use little caper buds instead. So delicious. Oh my God. In addition to the caper leaves and capers or caper berries, depending on what you got, there are also tomatoes here. I got a few different kinds. The famous ox heart, which is going to give like a really kind of meaty texture. Then I have these guys, which are going to give some sweetness and color. This is going to give you some sweetness and acidity. So I always recommend like mixing tomato varieties, ideally in season, and that way you get the nuances of the different types of fruit. Some people believe that Italian tomatoes are the best tomatoes in the world. Why? They're not even from Italy. They're from Mesoamerica. So I don't know, had a tomato in Mexico, like it's delicious. Also Jersey, like Holler, my home state, makes delicious tomatoes. It's the Garden State, we all know this. So in any event, just know that you don't have to be in Italy to make this salad. In fact, there's great produce. There are people doing amazing agriculture all over the world. Sometimes you just have to look really hard to find them. But without asking, without creating a demand for quality seasonal products, they're not gonna magically appear, most likely. So on that note, I'm gonna prep the tomatoes. I'm just gonna cut them into like wedges or quarters, depending on basically the architecture of the tomato. You can see the ridges here kind of imply the shape that the tomato will take when I cut it. So I'm gonna start by just taking out all of these stems. Now, I think it's fair to say that this should be like a warm weather salad. Depending on what hemisphere you're in, that might be a different time of year than others. But do your best to use seasonal ingredients. They usually taste better. I'm just gonna halve these guys. If I was just being the most efficient Katie Parla that I could, I would use the top of a deli cup, set it on top, and slice it that way. But I'm like notorious for giving away deli cups filled with food from my fridge, so. And I'm just following like the natural geometry. Also keeping track of like what the texture of your fruit is like, because it's not universally tender or mature or ripe always at the same time. And one way, at least when working with tomatoes, that you can manage that is just by cutting away any like underripe or hard bits. One of the many great things about engaging with farms or farm stalls is that the person who has grown the produce can probably tell you the best way to use it. Not all tomatoes are for salad. And so when you go to your fruttivendolo di fiducia, or the produce vendor that you trust here in Rome, you can tell them what you're doing and they'll make a suggestion of not just the varieties, but also like the proportion that you should use in order to have the best outcome. That smells great. I'm actually gonna cut this into thinner wedges, just because I don't wanna have the repetition of the same freaking shape over and over again. So this, I'm kind of cutting it into, I don't know, like if you were cutting bell pepper sticks. Before I put this away, I'm gonna cut these guys into little rounds. I could certainly put them in whole, but I'm not gonna do that today. I kind of like seeing the cross section of the seeds. These guys look like little gherkins. They're so cute. And can I recommend a trip to Pantelleria? It is an island that is so wild. Like, yeah, you can find vacation rentals and stuff, but the island itself is just still so like raw and wild. And there aren't like big, huge resorts. There also are not very dependable ways to get there. So the options include flying from Palermo or Catania year-round. There are also some year-round flights from like Bergamo, because a lot of Bergamaschi have houses there. And maybe Milan too. But otherwise, if you're trying to get there between, let's say, September to June, you're not talking a direct flight from the mainland or the continente, which would be not just continental Europe, but like specifically what Sicilians call Italy. Other options to take a boat from Sicily. It's not the most fun boat you'll ever take. So the moral of the story is, if you go out of season, which is like the high season is like July, August, or mid-June, July, August, those mainland flights end early September, just know you're gonna have to do like a few little layovers maybe, but it's definitely worth it. The place is amazing. I told you about the caper bushes that cascade from the Aurelian walls and just generally other brick walls all over the Mediterranean world. They're not like that in Pantelleria because the winds are so fierce that they train the capers and the grapevines close to the ground. So you'll see this kind of like, it looks like this like eruption of green leaves from the ground, and then all the caper, not quite vines, but like the caper branches with all their leaves shading the fruit, just like kind of spider web their way over the ground. It's so stunning. And they create this really beautiful green contrast against the gray and black volcanic soil. It's insane. So go to there. I added the rinsed caper berries, rinsed and soaked. So when I opened the container, the caper berries looked like this. They were caked in salt. When you taste them, they are borderline inedible. That's how salty they are. So to make them food, you got to rinse off the salt and then soak them in water. And then after, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, change the water. And then after 15, 20 minutes, change the water. And then taste them. And if they're still too salty, change the water. And then keep repeating, tasting along the way until they're the perfect flavor for you. Last step, caper leaves. Oh, they're so beautiful. Tastes so good, oh my God. we're ready to dress this baby. So I've got my trusty little piglet here. I'm gonna hit it with a little bit of freshly ground black pepper. None of that pre-ground bullshit. Olio Molizano. So Trottarello, which is this really amazing olive oil from Molise. And then my buddy Andrea makes this vinegar in Reggio Emilia or near Reggio Emilia. The recipe in the book calls for red wine vinegar. This is the stir part of the dump and stir recipe. And really, like, the only challenging step here is to figure out, is the seasoning right? That's perfect. It wouldn't be a dish at Casa Parla if it didn't have a fish on it. She loves a nautical theme. And I want to make sure that I get some of those caper berries, which have escaped to the bottom, are hiding. We can't allow that. And there you have it. Caper leaf salad.